Nigeria's cash scarcity fast becoming a polycephalous problem, and as only 16 days to the elections, cash shortage continues to strain macroeconomic activities and disrupt lives in the West African country. Small to medium-sized businesses that transact mainly cash are feeling the pinch more. Some banks in whole or at some branches have completely closed shop. Staff is afraid for their lives because they are unable to provide the needed cash to their angry, tired and frustrated customers over the counter. Bank apps are almost always down to add insult to injury. For some Nigerians, everyday transactions are now being done on credits, pending when the apps come back up or if you're lucky when you find cash. And hanging over the shortage is a deadline, one which the Central Bank of Nigeria has given after February 10th. This Friday, that is, the old Naira notes will cease to be legal tender. Nonetheless, the Supreme Court of Nigeria on Wednesday, in a ruling, ordered the central bank to refrain from implementing the February 10 deadline. The Supreme Court extended the life of the old 1,000, 500 and 200 Naira notes by 5 days, pending the hearing of the substantive case. But the CBN is yet to comment on the matter, leaving the citizens in limbo as to whether or not the old denominations can still be used in transactions as pockets of violence and disorderliness rock some parts of the country. Let's continue our coverage of the cash supply crisis in Nigeria. You're welcome to the square. My name is Kemini Amanor. Our first stop will be to check the pulse of cash seekers in some parts of the country, and we're making a quick stop in Abuja. Amadine Uyi is our man there, and he's joining us via Zoom. Amadine, we spoke yesterday. Situation had not improved, but let's just say the Supreme Court ruling has come in now. What are you hearing on ground?
Kemini, nothing has changed on ground here in Abuja. The long queues are still being witnessed. The residents who have come to withdraw cash from the ATMs still do not have access to cash. We spoke to several of them who said that they have resorted to trekking long distances to their places of work. One told us yesterday that in fact he has given up, that after trekking the first day, that yesterday he could not go. We spoke to several who say that they are unable to buy food and buy the basic necessities. A lot of ATMs around the city center are not dispensing cash. Very few are dispensing cash, but the ones which are dispensing cash, you still witness long queues. Citizens are complaining. They say the hardship is too much and they want urgent action from whoever is responsible in implementing this policy to quickly do something to reduce the hardship citizens and residents of Abuja are facing.
I see. Talk to us about how cash seekers are making meaning of the Supreme Court ruling. What do they think? Is tomorrow the deadline? What is the conversation on the ground?
Several who have spoken to, they are hopeful that the Supreme Court will intervene because it seems the Central Bank of Nigeria, led by the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, is not ready to budge. People say they have waited for President Muhammadu Buhari to make a statement and end this hardship. Nothing has come from the presidency. They are hoping that now that the Supreme Court has intervened, the Supreme Court says that there should be, the status quo should be maintained. They are hoping that after tomorrow, that not just that they can use the old notes, but the notes should be available and people can return back to their normal lives.
Well, Amadine, thank you so much for joining us with that update. And you're right, we can only hope that after tomorrow, the old Naira notes are still legal tender in transactions in Nigeria. Amadine Uyi there, he's our man in Abuja. He's been giving us an update after visiting some ATMs and bank centers in that part of the country. Now, let's come to our guests who are also on Zoom. Dr. Emman Shehu is director of the International Institute of Journalism in Abuja. Ogechi Anthony Ngbaka is a legal practitioner. He's joining us from Lagos. And Tope Temokun is lawyer and human rights activist. Also here in Lagos, Nigeria. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the square. And I'll just say this quickly. We will also go around, join our correspondent who's been going around here in Lagos to find out what's happening. But my understanding is that our connectivity is failing us, like many other things in the country right now. And so we only have Tope over the connection on Zoom. Tope, many thanks for your patience here on the program. And I want to start with, you know, the impact of the cash crisis on people. Surely, as a human rights activist, you see some violations there. What are your readings so far?
My readings so far is that we got it wrong from the beginning. We got it wrong. The policy of redesigning the Naira notes for the purpose of curbing monetization of the electoral process will have ordinarily been a good advancement, you know, to our democratic process. But unfortunately, there is no way you can treat malaria fever by pouring cold water on the hot body and expect malaria to go. You cannot deal with monetization of electoral process by mopping the street of cash because of politicians who have access to excess of cash, and because of the fact that they will use that cash to buy votes during election. And you think the only solution to stop vote buying during election in a country as large as Nigeria, largely agricultural, largely rural, largely illiterate, is by taking cash away from the street. We got it wrong because the policy was directed at election. If federal government of Nigeria under Muhammadu Buhari had been honest with the policy of stop vote buying in Nigeria, it should not be few days to election that they will come to street with Ghana must go and take all the cash away. No. The president spent 8 years at the saddle. He's spending the 8th year now. The policies of the government, the economic policies of the government, what is the rating of the citizen with respect to how it has affected their life?
Well, I'm just wondering, Tope, based on the consequences of this ruling, do you see people being violated as far as the human rights are concerned? Would you be able to interpret what's happening in that regard?
The problem with that ruling is I'm afraid whether the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to actually make that order, to dabble into that matter. This is a policy of the CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria. We know that Central Bank of Nigeria is an agency of the federal government. But I don't think, to be very honest with you, I don't think this is one of those constitutional situations where you can invoke the provision in the Constitution that says Supreme Court can have original jurisdiction on matters. I cannot see that situation here because under Section 232, what the Constitution says is if there is a dispute between states of the Federation and the Federation, then the states, the aggrieved states, they can approach the Supreme Court and invoke the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, even when we know that ordinarily Supreme Court will not have original jurisdiction to hear any matter. Well, apart from that exception. So now, the order given by the Supreme Court was giving expertise to lawyers. You know, it's always very easy for one to go to court and get another expert and people jubilate. But to us who are lawyers, we know that the celebration may be short-lived. Celebration may be short-lived.
So yeah, and I've seen the argument about jurisdiction against the Supreme Court. But what would have been the right thing to do? Because it would seem that if 3 states have a problem with the federal government, the Supreme Court would have been a place to go. But then you also make the case that it is not a constitutional matter. What would have been the right thing to do?
in this case, CBN as an if you have problem with Nigeria Police Force, when Nigeria Police Force unleash violence on citizens, you can sue the federal government, and in most of the cases we take to court against Nigeria Police Force, we join Attorney General of the Federation, and we know that Attorney General of the Federation is the party in court that represents the government. Once you join Attorney General of the Federation, you have joined the federal government of Nigeria. So in this case now, in cases of police human rights violations, when you sue Nigeria Police Force, you sue IG, you join AG. It is a similar situation here. When a CBN, the direct infraction of that constitutes the grievance of the three governors that went to the Supreme Court is against the Central Bank of Nigeria. The policy was from Central Bank of Nigeria. The policy that redesigned Naira was made pursuant to the CBN Act. The primary party in that case will have been the CBN. And there is no way the state government can take CBN to the Supreme Court. You go before the Federal High Court. For me, if there is a magic that will extend the deadline and bring the cash back to us, I will be happy. Let us forget about whether the politician is coming to buy vote. Are you sure people will win before that election? Are you sure people will survive before that election?
Tope, hold your horses. I'm going to come back to you, but Ogechi has just joined us. Ogechi Ngbaka is also a legal practitioner. Ogechi, you heard the conversation I've been having with Tope so far. He seems to toe the line of the Attorney General of the Federation that the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction on this matter, therefore shouldn't have ruled or even hedged the case in the first place. What are your take as a legal practitioner?
Okay, good afternoon, Kemini. Thank you for having me. Lastly, I agree with my learned friend's submission. The Supreme Court did not have original jurisdiction to entertain the suit instituted by the three states, Kogi, Kaduna, and Zamfara states. The facts of the case does not come within what was envisaged under Section 232 of the Constitution, under which the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court would have been invoked. If you look at it critically, the main party against whom this decision was made is the CBN, which is an agency of the federal government. And by Section 251 of the Constitution, the jurisdiction to deal with matters affecting agencies of the federal government is within the purview of the Federal High Court. Also, if you go further down in that same section, legal tender was mentioned as one of the items under which the Federal High Court has power to adjudicate on. The issue in contention is not a conflict between the Federation and the states or between different states. This is clearly an action that should have been properly brought before the Federal High Court and not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did not have jurisdiction in the first place to have entertained the matter.
Okay, despite the Supreme Court not having jurisdiction over the matter, it ruled. What are the implications then for the ruling? Is it binding on the federal government? Is it binding on the banks who are party to the case? And even by extension, the CBN that was not a primary party to the case?
No, I want to say something clear. Decisions of courts, judgments of courts are largely two types. There are judgments in personam and there are judgments in rem. Judgments in rem are largely declaratory judgment that binds everyone, while judgment in personam is directed at the parties before the court. Now, when you look at the facts surrounding this particular case, and of course the order of the court, interim order of the court that was granted, it is a judgment in personam because it's directed at a particular person. Unfortunately, the primary party was not joined in the suit, which is the CBN. Now, that begs the question, how do you enforce that judgment? The party that was sued is the Attorney General of the Federation. And that was on the basis because the AG is the legal representative of the federal government. But the question is, can the AGF direct the CBN governor, give direction to the CBN governor? The answer is no. The AGF cannot direct the CBN governor. But be that as it may, the decision as it is now is interim, which means the court are not even given a final decision.
Indeed. I'll come back to you, Ogechi, in a moment, but let's go to Dr. Shehu now. Dr. Shehu has been over the phone for a while now, and Doc, you have heard what both of them have said, what appeared to be a glimmer of hope in all of this. They will seem to have dashed that. What do you make of what you have heard so far?
Well, good afternoon. What I've heard so far makes me feel that we're going to go into legal entanglement rather than facing the immediate problem of the cash trap across the country. So I think there's a misplacement of priority. The immediate should be looking for ways of ensuring that money is available. That's the bottom line.
Right. Dr. Shehu, are you still there?
Right.
I'm getting feedback. If you could turn down the volume on your monitoring set, whether it's a TV or a laptop device, because I can hear myself. While you do that, here's my question for you. This decision, albeit not binding on the CBN, is binding on the federal government, and I hope that the lawyers can dig in as well. Do you still expect President Muhammadu Buhari to honor his 7-day promise, which ends tomorrow, to the Nigerian people? And what would you expect him to be doing now?
What would you expect him to be doing?
What I expect him to be doing is look at
Dr. Shehu, I cannot hear you, and so we'll fix the connection with you and we'll take your response to that question again. In the meantime, I'll come back to Tope. Tope, despite, just dig into the question for me. We have a ruling, the federal government enjoined in this suit, and because of that, it covers in whether or not there was jurisdiction. A ruling has come. By extension, shouldn't it affect the CBN?
Well, we are, because we are lawyers, we talk like this because we are lawyers. If you take a case to court and you get an order of court, you know, people who are litigants, they always go home celebrating, even when the lawyer knows that this celebration is not going to end anywhere, you know. So there is no shortcut in matters of law. If the Supreme Court does not have jurisdiction, there will be nothing to celebrate about. Because the Attorney General who you know, another was gotten ex parte against the AG of the Federation. And what do we mean by ex parte order? This is an order that was made on the urgency of the moment, without putting the other party on notice. But because of the nature of this case, I will not be surprised if the Supreme Court is sitting virtually every day or every 2 days on a matter like this. And that is to defend that whatever objection the Attorney General of the Federation is also bringing will also be entertained in a matter of days by the Supreme Court.
I see.
And that may actually lead, that may also lead to the vacation of that order. So if the order is now if the order is now vacated, we are back to square one. We are back to the time of no order. The matter will be.
So I think that I'm you know, as well, as a resident in Nigeria, right? I am caught in the middle and I'm asking myself, does February 10 as a deadline still hold? Ogechi, what would you say?
Yeah, in light of the decision of the Supreme Court, as it is now, the federal government will have to obey the ruling of the court to suspend the enforcement of the deadline, which is tomorrow. And the hearing of the main matter has been adjourned to the 15th of this month. So the federal government will have to abide by the ruling of the court and forestall further enforcement of implementing the deadline of 10th of February. So,
okay, I'm gonna. I see. It seems to have caused more confusion, but I'll come back to you on that. Let's join our correspondent, Niyi Omoniyi, who's visited some banks and ATMs here in Lagos. Niyi, where have you been and what can you report?
Well, we've been to some parts of Lagos, at least 3 major locations, but we are right here at Adiola Odeku, Victoria Island, where we have about 4 stretch of banks along this axis. And we've been able to speak with people earlier today, just like you've been you've had people talk on the show. While the legal entanglement is still going on with the Supreme Court ruling and everything, residents are still here. You can, in some of these banks, you can not even see people in front of the ATMs. But just one of those banks far left, where I am right now, there are a lot of people still gathered there, although unlike when we got there earlier this morning, the number has reduced now, but they are still bearing the brunt of whatever it is this decision has been. So tomorrow, they get to know if this decision stands, where the 10th of February deadline holds water, or if they will have more opportunity to get cash or to even make withdrawals above what they are. But currently now, people are really complaining. They're groaning hard, and they're complaining about the fact that, not just the fact that they can't even get the money from the banks, even the point of sales operators are charging so much before they can even get a substantial amount of money.
What kind of denominations are they getting from the banks and the ATMs?
1,000 naira, majorly 1,000 naira. The 500 and the 200 naira denominations are quite scarce, and that's all I've observed for now. Although some of these denominations are in circulation, but not the new currency. But we're speaking about the new currency. The 1,000 naira new currency is more in circulation.
I see. And speaking to people on the ground, do you get the impression that they are aware of this legal entanglement that we're in, and what are their thoughts about it?
The truth is, I was speaking with someone earlier, funny, the person said, well, whether the Supreme Court rules or not, he knows that the federal government will not obey. And maybe, just as we're looking at things right now with this legal entanglement going back and forth, because this is just an interim judgment anyways, this might linger on for quite a while, and the effects might not really trickle down until a particular policy is changed or it's adapted to, depending on what they decide to do from tomorrow. But the issue still remains that the people are worried, the people are scared, the people just want something that will take effect immediately and reduce the pain of trying to get their own money that they worked for from these banks that they've paid it into.
Very well. Niyi, thank you so much for that report. Niyi Omoniyi joined us after visiting some banking hall ATMs in Lagos. Let's go back to our guests. Ogechi Ngbaka is a legal practitioner here in Lagos. Tope Temokun is also a lawyer and human rights activist. We also have Dr. Shehu, who is director at the International Institute of Journalism. He's joined us over the phone from Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I come back to you, Ogechi, and let's talk about strategy. What do you think was the strategy of these 3 states, or the lawyer for these 3 states, for wanting to take the case to the Supreme Court? What do you see here?
Okay, quite strategic actually. They realize that joining the CBN will automatically, on the face of it, bring the matter outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And to circumvent that, CBN was excluded, and they proceeded to file a suit against the ADF. Also, the fact that now when you look at the CBN Act, the CBN Act requires reaction notice to be given for any suit that is to be instituted against officers of the CBN. And the complying with that provision, they will be caught with time. As such, the effect of the suit will never be achieved. So I believe in order to also circumvent that, they excluded CBN as a party and proceeded against the federal government. But even at that, looking at the affidavit of urgency, the motion ex parte, the regulating summons, and all the other processes involved, the substance of the suit is actually against the CBN, and it is something that was ought to be within the purview of the Federal High Court. But they have employed this strategy, and somehow it has worked in their favor because they have achieved, at least to an extent, what they intended, and that is to prevent the implementation of the deadline of February 10th.
Very well.
So until the main suit is held on the 15th, the decision of the court stands, so they have achieved their aim.
I see. Dr. Shehu, not only are we finding a legal entanglement to this, but we also see the politicization of this matter. I'm told Dr. Shehu is not over the phone now. I move on to Tope now. Tope, so you heard, as Mini said, the perception is that despite this ruling, nothing will change, and perhaps February 10 will continue to be the deadline as set by the CBN. What are the consequences if the federal government does not instruct its assigns to stick to or adhere to the ruling of the Supreme Court?
We are back to the issue that we have been confronted with for a very long time under President Buhari's government, and that is the issue of impunity. You know, the correspondent that spoke last in Lagos, from Ogechi, mentioned something that those who were interviewed, those who were interrogated in the street, some of them believe federal government will not obey the order, and they are very right. They are very, very correct. You know, for citizens to have concluded that this order given against the federal government will not be obeyed, it has brought to the fore what people who are within very small circle have been fighting for a very long time, and that is impunity, you know, of the government of the day. If legally we say that the deadline of tomorrow can no longer hold because of that order, how does that now affect the issue of availability of cash to the people for an unwilling federal government, for an unwilling CBN governor, you know, and for a unwilling banking system to make the cash available to the people? How does the Fed trickle down to the street, to the woman, to the trading woman in Teju market, in Radiola Ojepu by the roadside, or to the Aboki who selling suya by the night? How does that trickle down to them? How does it alter the present situation? That is the situation. The federal government may naturally obey the order. We are not new to that. Federal government of Nigeria under President Muhammad Buhari have disobeyed more orders.
Will there be any legal ramifications for any of the parties to this case if they fail to adhere to, the Supreme Court ruling?
The only party now is the Attorney General of the Federation. That is the only order debt. That is the only debtor to that order, AGF, and nobody else. If the order is directly made against the CBN governor, we can cite him for contempt. Even when we know, I know the number of times EFCC chairman has been cited for contempt. Have they gone to prison?
I see.
I know how many times people in big offices like the office of IG are cited for contempt.
Well,
have they gone to prison?
Let's spend some time with.
It is not even giving. That if the order is directly against the CBN governor, that will be obeyed. But when it is not even against the CBN governor, it's against the AGM.
And the commercial banks who are also respondents to this suit. But let's spend some time with Dr. Shehu. Dr. Shehu, I was asking earlier that not only are there legal entanglements, but we also see the politicization of the cash swap policy within the APC, within the government. How does this affect the country's bid to find a solution to the problem we have right now?
Just like I said about the legal entanglements, it's very unfortunate that the basic issue is not being addressed. The basic issue is why is money not available as it should be? And this is what should be the primary concern of the government and all the stakeholders. So the politicization is only going to make the situation worse, because what we now see is a battle for supremacy between the politicians and the need to create a narrative in terms of becoming elections over who is more sympathetic to the populace. So I think we're taking the wrong direction. The main thing is to address the problems in the system. Why are the applications not working? Why are the internet services not working? Why is money not available? Why are the banks hoarding what is available? These should be the mitigations and not the legalities involved, because the legalities are only going to make things worse. It's only going to continue to take us away from the immediate problem, and that's unfortunate.
Should we worry that all of these things are happening, Dr. Shehu, at this point in time when we have the elections only 16 days away, and there's some sort of a political rancor going on about, the cash crisis in the country? Should we worry as a people?
We should worry, and I'm surprised that people in position of leadership cannot see the danger of having this kind of bottleneck at this point in time, with elections around the corner. In fact, not even just coming out of the corner, not even around the corner. And also with the fuel problem, exacerbating the situation. So we should worry. And I'm wondering if anybody is really doing any SWOT analysis of the current situation and seeing that we are creating a very dangerous scenario. The solution is very simple. Just make the money available. Remove the bottleneck. Make the money available. It's as simple as that. It's not a matter of superiority. Who is more superior, the central bank or the Supreme Court? It's about making money available. That's just what is important at this point in time.
How do you see if this problem affecting people's ability to show up at the polls if it persists?
Number one problem, and that is why I'm wondering if there's a SWOT analysis, because there's going to be serious voter apathy. Why should I worry to go out and vote if I don't even have money to survive even on the eve of the voting? Why should I go and vote? So I'm amazed. People can't, in positions of leadership, cannot do a SWOT analysis and see the immediate danger of what is going on. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Speaking of SWOT analysis, the INEC met with security couples of the country who assured them that they have things under control for the elections. Will that suffice as what you call SWOT analysis?
That's just one aspect of a SWOT analysis. Are you also taking into consideration the feelings of the people? I mean, it's not about rioting. It's not about going to loot. It's also about will people go out to vote. That's part of it. And what will be the consequences after the results are out? Will that also create another problem in terms of the credibility of the election?
Very well. The other thing I want to talk about are the local government and state governments and what they could do to alleviate the situation that is happening in the states right now. And I'll come to the lawyers with that. But from where you sit, what do you think these local government and state governments could be doing?
What can they do? They are not in a position to move with the cash available. The only thing is they can only grandstand, as we're seeing, talking about going to court or saying this is not our own policy. The only meaningful thing they can do is try to calm the nerves of the people and also appeal to those who are responsible to make money available. It's as simple as that. Make money available. Whether it's the old currency or the new currency, make money available.
But do you see that happening? At least in Lagos State, I know that the governor of Lagos has put in some moves to alleviate the plight of people who may not have cash right now. However, when you look at the rest of the 35 states, apart from those who took the matter to court, it would seem that our state governors are just looking at the situation. They are onlookers, just like the rest of us. Is that correct?
Well, it's true that Lagos government has given some kind of indication of how the most vulnerable in the society can be helped, but how is that going to solve the problem? I mean, it's just a mitigation that's not going to last the distance if we do not begin to address the basic problem, which is make the applications to work, so that people can make transfers and then make the money available. I don't know why they can't understand this. Is it that they didn't print enough money, or why is it that the banks are hoarding the money? And what is being done to ensure that those who are hoarding the money are dealt with? It's also part of the problem we have in this society. We make policies, we do not also look at the possible fallout and also the punishment for those who try to circumvent the policy and create holes in the place. I can tell you, this is in China. A lot of these bank managers would have been executed by now. I'm very sure of that.
I see. That's quite strong, Dr. Shehu. But I come to you, Ogechi, now.
Yeah, but
right.
People are dying.
Right. Ogechi, I come to you now. For examples of other nations who practice the federal system, it would seem that the state's governors would have some kind of autonomy in cases like this. What are the legal leeways for state governors in a scenario like this in Ghana, in Nigeria? I beg your pardon, Ogechi.
Thank you. With the federation as it is presently constituted, the state government and of course the local government, there's almost nothing they can do in this situation. The reason is the powers are so massively constituted at the center, and of course issues of monetary policy is within the exclusive direction of the CBN. And the state governors can do little or less. And of course, we will be planning for restructuring. And even if we have restructuring in place, there is no way the different states, the comprising states, can have their various legal tenders. It has to be a central legal tender, which is the Naira. And that, of course, should be within the control of a central agency, in this instance the government. So even in a restructured scenario, the state governments and the local governments are largely incapacitated on addressing this issue. The best they can do, as in what Lagos State has done, is somehow help to alleviate the pressure on the people, and of course push on the federal government and the federal government agencies, and make recommendations on possible or more effective ways of implementing these policies, because they are more closer to the people and they understand how these things affect them.
I see.
So they can recommend to the federal government on best route of implementing these
Well, that sounds like it should be a no-brainer, but here we are, right? I want to talk to Tope. Tope, you have the last word here. Should the Nigerian people still expect President Muhammadu Buhari to speak to them when his 7-day promise that he gave expires tomorrow? Do you expect him to do anything in light of the Supreme Court ruling?
I'm not expecting President Muhammadu Buhari to do anything. I'm not expecting. What kind of expectation will I have at this 11th hour of his government, where he has to be talking to citizens for the past years now? The latter part of his second term was a time we spent without having a president that talked to the citizens. So I'm not going to expect anything from Muhammadu Buhari. But yes, what the doctor actually said about making cash available, making the applications work, all of these things are things that we, to a little extent, understand. It is the prayer on the server of the banks. It is the prayer on their server that makes those applications to crash. It is the prayer of those servers. And why are they prayers on servers when cash is not available? That is the prayer on the servers. If you want to make transaction now, except you keep vigil and do it between the hour of 1 a.m. and maybe 6, 7 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
The solution was to make cash available.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all we have time for, Tope. We cannot go any further than... We cannot go any further than we have. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Shehu, thank you so much for your patience. We had connectivity issue, but you stayed with us, and I know there's a lot more to discuss about this issue. I'm grateful for your time, and I'm grateful to you at home, wherever you're watching us, for staying with us throughout all of this. Village Square Africa returns next Monday, but I'll see you again when I do. My name is Kemini Amanor. Stay safe.